Yeah, I think Mr. President, Mr. Geingob, fails to understand the difference between genocide and colonialism, and specifically in this case, apartheid colonialism. Genocide is a deliberate attempt, and also not just an attempt, but also an act to, to wipe out an entire ethnic group. Whereas in the case of apartheid, apartheid had no racial or ethnic fixation to wipe out or to annihilate any specific group, whether this group would be annihilated in its whole, in its entirety, or in part. Genocide is one possible outcome of a colonization project, but colonization does not necessarily mean that there is always a genocide. You can colonize a country or a territory without mass extermination of people, but genocide always involves, a large scale murder. And I think in the case of Namibia, the genocide targeted two specific groups with an explicit written order, and also with extermination camps. Apartheid did not have extermination camps, mass expropriation, deportations, forced sterilization, desecration of human bodies, including people's skulls, including people's brains, including people's hair, ear, eyes. And this was all in the name of racial science and white supremacy. Have we ever heard of a mass cutting off of people's heads during apartheid? This is what happened during the genocide. Did we ever hear about extermination camps of specific groups of people during apartheid? That is the difference. And both are brutal. Apartheid was brutal, but so was genocide also. And we need to understand it for that. And I think also it's the genocide that reduced those targeted to minorities in an independent Namibia. And this really, I think the statement shows Mr. Geingob's complete disrespect and violation of the rights of people who are today minorities in Namibia. And I think for me, it also sort of borders on, questioning the citizenship of minorities in Namibia. For a person who has studied at high level, one would have thought that the president's definition of reconciliation would have much more intellectual depth, since he was addressing people or young people who strive to be scholars and academics and are at university level. But I think Mr. Geingob's views about reconciliation need to be understood within Namibia's whole approach to national reconciliation. It was really a selective morality on the part of the ruling SWAPO party. And so for many in our society, it was mostly a matter of white people agreeing to or making peace with a black majority government, but on condition that the ill-gotten white capital interest should only be touched in a very superficial manner. And that seems to be sort of the understanding of not only Mr. Geingob, but also the ruling party's understanding of reconciliation. And this understanding lacks depth. So I don't know. Reconciliation, in my view, should provide for restoring relationships and also rehabilitation of those who have suffered losses and who were traumatized in the process. The question in the Namibian case is, how do you restore relationships without any clear commitment to policies and to strategies that will bring justice and equity? The current talks between these two countries do not talk about justice. They do not talk about equity. Also, I think there must be sensitivity in the personal interaction between the perpetrator and the victim, and that must be the first step in paving the way for a very genuine process for reconciliation to begin. There has been absolutely no sensitivity in personal interaction between those people that represent specifically the Nama people and specifically the Ovaherero people in this case. There has not been that personal interaction. If there is no personal interaction, how do you begin to talk about reconciliation? The government is a mediator and therefore waters down the entire discussion. You cannot, it is like a child that was raped, and then the parents of the child and the perpetrator sit at the table and decide what should be happening to the child and what kind of solution should be found for this child, while the child has absolutely no say in it. That is not reconciliation. So I don't know what reconciliation Mr. Geingob is talking about. When he talks about Germany has accepted genocide, I think that that is more a political statement of rhetoric rather than a statement of fact. Germany is saying we accept it as genocide from today's perspective. Legally, this means that at the time it was committed, it was not genocide. Germany further goes in its legal argument. It says that the international laws of the time permitted Germany and the German Reich to do whatever it wanted to do with the natives, and that includes killing them at a massive scale. That is what Germany is saying. So Germany has not accepted genocide. It is Germany has given a conditional acknowledgement, and therefore any apology that would come would be a conditional apology and not a genuine apology. I also find it very strange for the president to talk about reconciliation. It's very strange while, the ruling SWAPO party has continued until today to remain silent about the fate of more than 3,000 SWAPO members who were languishing in the Lubango dungeons. Only less than 300 were brought back, whereas the fate of the plus minus 3,200 persons whereabouts still remains a family, a mystery. And the families are still bleeding in grief. But SWAPO has not yet made any move towards acknowledgement or agreeing to deal with this chapter of its past. So it is very ironic for a president of the ruling party and the president of Namibia to talk about reconciliation in such a way.